Blackhawks fans, welcome to another edition of the Four Feathers podcast. This one is 100% after dark. Somebody was not polite to their ping pong balls because the not so lucky lottery occurred earlier this evening. It is Tuesday, May 5th. Happy Cinco de Mayo to those who celebrate. I am GM Ron Luce, joined by none other than Anthony, don't call me late for dinner, Tony Marchese. How are you doing, my friend?
That's a new intro you got there for me. I'm not doing well tonight, Ron. I'm a little hashtag mad online, as they like to say in the business, about what we saw tonight transpire. I don't know who was mean to the ping pong balls, but it wasn't me. I think I sent the first message into the Four Feathers group today and said, everybody be nice to your ping pong balls. I think I was ahead of schedule. And Ron, as you know, it's a different day when Tony Marchese normally is the first one to send a message into the Four Feathers group chat. So I don't know, maybe I threw some stuff off. I'm a little mad at myself for that. What's happening here? This is a worst case scenario. I'm the hashtag mad online.
And you are not alone, sir. And there's quite a few, including our good friend, Mr. Blackhawks Cowboy. If you haven't seen his online tirade, do be sure to check that out. It's been a good one. It's been passionate, and that's why I say it's a good one. And we appreciate passion in these parts. Hello, and a happy Tuesday to you as well, Daniel Berry Sports Highlights. Tone, you mentioned it. Matt Online, worst case scenario, kind of some of the buzzwords here tonight. Speaking of buzzwords, that's going to prompt one of these.
What are you drinking tonight, Ron?
I got a little, I'm sad because the Hawks are picking fourth juice is what we call it. But Tony.
What do they put in that? Is that like a premium cocktail?
No, that's like a Members Mark bourbon that was like $10 at Sam's Club.
Hey, it works. Whatever gets the job done.
Whatever gets the job done. And speaking of a job to be had, the Blackhawks will pick fourth in the upcoming draft lottery. So, reminder to everybody, technically speaking, this was one of the most likely scenarios. There's about a 70% chance the Blackhawks would pick third or fourth. That's just kind of the way the odds work. Regardless, they still had plenty of chance to get one or two. They were pretty much a ping pong ball away in either cases. Ultimately, though, it's in another Original Six franchise that will pick first overall. The Toronto Maple Leafs win the draft lottery. What a year for them to win it after the debacle. Tony, we haven't had a chance to talk about this yet because this is still super fresh. Doesn't pertain to the Blackhawks, but it pertains to the NHL. Did you see the John Chayka press conference in Toronto for his hiring?
I did not, Ron. You're going to have to fill me in on this. This is live news to me.
So we'll get to that here in a second. We'll keep pushing through some of these odds real quick. We'll revisit the Toronto stuff here in just a hot second. But Toronto will pick first. San Jose will pick second. They come up from the ninth worst, best, whatever you want to consider it, odds to ultimately get the second overall pick. So as a result, the first and second teams finishing in the standings, which are the Blackhawks and the Vancouver Canucks, all shift back 2 spots, hence why the Blackhawks will pick fourth. According to Kyle Davidson, he was made available to the media after this. He said, quote, "We're going to get a really good player pretty much regardless when it's all said and done." And we've got official Oski Wow here in the comments. This is bullcrap. He says, "We will never be good again." And I think that's kind of the general feeling right now, Tone, of Blackhawks fandom, is that the sky is falling. Don't get me wrong. I'm pissed. I'm a little more, I think, put out than pissed, Tone. Like, I feel like I got kicked in the dick more so than like I want to go punch a hole in the wall. But it's a real bummer in a year like this where the Hawks put themselves in a good position to have a shot at that pick. And the new lottery system is continually showing that it really doesn't fucking matter if you finish all the way toward the end of the standings, because quite frankly, outside of the Sharks and the Blackhawks not moving just a few years ago when Macklin Celebrini and Artem Levshunov went 1-2 in that draft, there has not been a case where the two worst teams stayed at 1 and 2. In fact, almost all of those teams have moved back. Your feelings, Tony, and just kind of where your head is at, again, circa 5 hours now post NHL Draft Lottery.
Hey, this is why we sat on this podcast all year and talked about why winning is important, why building a winning culture is important, why we didn't care where this team would finish in the lottery standings. You could have been Toronto, right? Like,
you could have been the San Jose
go
Sharks.
back to our games we want backtracker. Win some of those games. You could have finished 9th, 10th, somewhere up there, and still wound up around where you were going to be picking in this draft. I think we've said it all season, and this is why I've literally fucking said over and over again, I want this team to figure out the way to win hockey games. You said it too. I'm kind of mad. The only reason that you wake up on NHL Draft Lottery Day and think your team has a shot to draft a franchise-changing player is because your team fucking sucked all year. We've been through that now 4 times. I wasn't exactly happy with Kyle Davidson's remarks. I don't think that they're out of pocket. Sure, they're going to draft a good player at 4 overall, but the feeling around the franchise would be totally different had the ping pong balls gone a different way right now.
Definitely.
And I think it's okay for the fans, myself, you, everyone else listening to this show, to be a little upset. You finished in the second worst spot again, and you've done this over and over. And guess what? It doesn't pay off for you. That's a shitty feeling.
Most definitely. And Tony, I'm glad you brought that up because you and I sat here at the beginning of the season when everybody was team tank. Remember this, right? There was receipts.
There were a lot of people who were team tank.
I told everybody, I said, hey, like everybody's team tank and the feelings are out there. Let's get to a couple comments here. Pistol Petey, the Hawks suck. He wishes they didn't, but Chicago sucks and hopes that they don't waste Bedard.
I agree with that statement. I hope we don't waste Bedard.
For sure. And
nobody does.
I sat here and said, I don't give a rat's fuck about the lottery because we had just watched the New York Islanders move up from the 11th worst or the 11th best odds in the lottery to pick number 1 and take Matthew Schaefer. And look what happened this year. The Toronto Maple Leafs move up because their pick was lottery protected, so they don't have to give it away to the Boston Bruins. And they're going to pick number 1, and they're going to get somebody to maybe replace Austin Matthews. Surely at least add to Austin Matthews, ideally for this season. And look at San Jose, Tony. A perfect example of they were better. And the Hawks were trending that way. We saw it a little bit early in the season. And obviously there was some bad luck involved. And it's, it is what it is at this point. We can't rewrite history. But it just went to show that they tried to win and it's paid off for them. They're in a really good position because they don't really need forwards per se. They need a lot of defense. And this is also a very good defense draft. I know everybody's super glued onto McKenna.
I think that's just the nature of the beast though right now. There are some interesting defensive names, and we're going to get into that on this show. Hoping to get Prospect Down on here and break this down at some point soon.
Most definitely.
But I think this is really just a byproduct of the fact that the Hawks have gone defensive heavy in some of these recent drafts. Levshinov, Korchinski, you throw these names in here who should be at the point where they're going to make an impact, and there's question marks. Sam Renzel, throw that name out there too. People want the help for Connor Bedard. And I think that the storyline was, can they get Gavin McKenna? And I think tonight we're firmly in the camp where you realize you're not getting Gavin McKenna. You're probably not getting Stenberg either. So You talked about this a little bit ago on our last show. You think
Mhm.
there's going to be two major additions to the offensive side of this franchise. One potentially could have come through the draft. That's eliminated right now. If you're Kyle Davidson, sure, you can go out there and say, yeah, we're going to draft a really good player. Might be a really good player that they get at 4 if they don't trade the pick. But it's not someone who's going to probably step into the lineup next season and be an impactful forward in your top 6. That's kind of a problem, at least where I sit.
And Tony,
I
think
to do a little more work.
Sure, there's a lot more that still needs to happen, right? Like, it's early in the offseason. This is just the first domino, and obviously we're going to continue to unpack that over the course of the offseason. But I do want to note one thing that was interesting, and I think it's something that is keeping a lot of people optimistic, and we've got some of that here in the comments as well that I want to touch on. Lebowski kind of kickstarted that a little bit earlier. So Craig Button released a way too early mock draft, and he had this exact outcome that you see below on the screen. For those that are not watching and you're listening, Lebowski says, boys, this is the way the draft will go. Toronto will take McKenna. San Jose will take Reed. Chase Reed is one of the top defensemen in this draft, for anybody that is unsure. He says Vancouver will take Caleb Malhotra, and the Blackhawks will get Igor Stenberg. Now, Tony, I will say this. That is certainly not an impossible scenario. And the reason being, San Jose desperately needs defense. If you look at that blue line right now in the NHL, it's not good. And outside of Sam Dickinson, who they took a few years back at the 11th overall pick, they really don't have any top defensive prospects. And this is a good defenseman draft. Like, this is a good draft, period. But it's Vancouver that I just sit there and I go, I know the great Manny Malhotra, which, by the way, quick story time here from Tony and I. We're dating ourselves because I remember watching Manny Malhotra play, and there's a very fair amount of Chicago Blackhawks content creators, including our good friend Blackhawks Cowboy, that are too young to remember watching Manny Malhotra play. I digress. But Manny Malhotra is in that organization. He played for the Vancouver Canucks. You know, they're saying, wow, that could happen. But Blackhawks Cowboy brought up a great point in our group chat. He said, Vancouver notoriously has always taken Swedes. That's been kind of a bread and butter of the Vancouver
you think
franchise.
They're going to take Stenberg?
I'm just saying we don't know. I have no idea what's going to happen because, Tony, quite frankly, it's way too early.
You are GM Ron. What's your prediction?
GM Ron. I don't know. I'm going to start going and watching film. But I will say this. If I'm a Blackhawks fan, so I had two sides of the coin today, Tony.
If I'm a Blackhawks, you are a Blackhawks fan.
Hang on a second. Let me get there. There's two sides to this whole thing. And Lebowski's got a great point here. NHL GMs do love centermen and defensemen. That is a very true thing. In fact, the last time two wingers went at the top of the NHL draft, I saw this stat the other day. I think it's been over 15 years since two true wingers went one. Oh, it was the Patrick Kane draft. Patrick Kane and James Van Riemsdyk, which was 2007, if I do my math correctly, was the last time that two true wingers went 1 and 2 in the NHL draft, which is what Stenberg and McKenna are both. So it is something to consider there. So that's the one side of me, right? There's that optimism of like, maybe, who knows? Let's see what happens, right? Maybe. Yeah, that was 20 years ago. That's crazy to think. But
I just don't think either of those guys are falling to 4.
But so that's where I'm going.
Could be wrong. But
the other side of me says Blackhawks fans get ready to learn Caleb Malhotra because that also feels like a real possibility. Now, that being said, let's also, Tony, throw this in here for sake of where this conversation continues to go, just as an enhancement of the conversation. Kyle Davidson is on record. He did say tonight that the Blackhawks are certainly open to moving the pick if something comes true. They have, in fact, the Blackhawks were the last team to acquire a top 10 pick leading into the NHL draft. They did it back in 2022 when they selected Kevin Korchinski. That was in the Alex DeBrincat trade with Ottawa. They're the last team to move into the top 10 during the summer leading into the draft. Now, that's a very important thing because obviously there's years where picks get traded and then the next year they end up being top 10 and whatever, right? The rights are already owned. So there's a chance it could get traded. There's a chance maybe the Blackhawks are to move back or to move up or what have you, right? Like there's certainly that possibility. But as it stands, these are kind of the options that everybody is forced to weigh here now is Hawks fans. And even looking at some of these other teams, is just how is the board going to shake out? Because to all of us, it screams it should go McKenna, Stenberg, and then it's kind of a free for all from there. There's probably about 4 or 5 names that could go in the next 5 picks. But what if that doesn't happen, right? And that's kind of what everybody's now going to beat their head off the wall for the next 2 months until the draft at the end of June, because we're just going to have to wait and see how these teams value the players at the top of this draft. Now, Tony, I will say this too. And this is what I want your opinion on, because then I also have a follow-up question as well. Do you feel any kind of like, let me rephrase my question. Do you feel like the way that the draft lottery has gone and the Hawks falling to 4 has severely kind of washed out the memory of the fact that like this is a really good draft class in total and it's really deep, and the Hawks also have 3 2s in this draft? So like, I'm not saying they're going to get that guy that immediately steps in, but when we talk about continuing to reload the pipeline or potentially deal a draft pick for a player that fills a need, they still have 3 2s in this draft, one of which is going to be the number 2 pick in that second round, that maybe generates enough attention to still move some assets and do some things. I almost think the Hawks getting the 4th pick forces Kyle Davidson to be even more aggressive this offseason because of the depth of this draft and the copious amount of capital that they still have. And obviously, we can't ignore the 2 first-round picks that they potentially have in 2027. I say potentially because the Edmonton pick has a weird top 14 contingency on it. But do you think that the 4th overall, getting 4 overall, has kind of overshadowed the depth of this draft and like what the Hawks could still do to add to this pipeline?
Sure, from a Chicago standpoint, absolutely. I'm not an NHL draft expert by any means, so I'll preface everything I say with that, but it has been linked to being a deeper draft. And when you look at deep drafts in any sport, just from my observation watching sports, you definitely have a clear drop off from 1, 2, 3 to 4, 5, 7, right? I think that part of the reason why we look at this as a huge loss is because you can't secure one of the top 2 pieces within it after a long season and finishing at the bottom of the season.
Can't guarantee one of those 2. Right.
So, yes, I do think that the Hawks will still acquire some really good talent out of this. Kyle Davidson has shown the ability to maneuver the draft pretty well throughout his tenure. I would say that. I don't agree with all of his picks on all of those.
Sure.
I guess I'm on record on this show advocating for Ivan Demidov over Artem Levshinov, but hey, he's made some moves and utilized draft capital in a way that I think has been somewhat productive for the Blackhawks franchise. I don't think that's arguable at this point. Yeah, I would say your statement is definitely fair. There's a good chance that the first 4 picks of this draft, you only see one of them pan out, and it might not be in a franchise that is ready to win at that time that draft pick pans out. We've seen drafts like that happen before. But overall, I just hope KD can maneuver this the right way. I think despite your question of is this overshadowing it, I think this really put him in the worst possible case scenario that he woke up this morning thinking could happen, even though it was like statistically more likely to happen. You got to know that Kyle Davidson woke up yesterday morning like, hopefully I'm 1-2, because that makes the decision process a lot easier than where we're at now. That's why I tweeted out like, hey, he's got a lot of work to do here, because I think you need to rely on your scouting department. You need to rely on your ability to navigate things a little differently than when you have kind of a clear-cut decision to help the top forward group. His decision-making process right now is finally decided, but there's a lot more uncertainty than what you could have had when you woke up this morning and you were like hoping for that outcome. And I think that that's going to be difficult, and it could be defining for him.
Yeah, I think your point is incredibly valid in the sense of now being in the 4 spot, this really turns up the dial in terms of pressure and just of the kind of putting your money where your mouth is to this offseason, right? We've heard we're going to try and be aggressive. We're going to try and improve this team. Like, we really do want to take that step forward next year.
And I'm sure he knew this was a possibility when he made 100%. Those statements.
Yes, 100%. Like, again,
I don't want to sit there and be like, oh, he was banking on that. I think he knew there was a possibility walking into today. You're going to pick 4th. So I think we're just on a different path now.
Yeah, statistically speaking, there was a 70% chance they weren't picking in the top 2. So, like, I'm sure they absolutely have had nauseating amount of conversations about just like, hey, look, it probably is going to go worst case scenario. Obviously we're hoping for the best and expecting the worst. And
if they weren't planning for that, then like that's where I would say fire the entire front office.
And I don't think that's the case, but I do think now what I do think it does, Tone. I will say this, and maybe this is a little bit of a positive spin on it, dare I say. I think it does open up the possibilities of what's to happen, because I think if they got 1 or 2, it pretty much pigeonholes them and says, yeah, okay, we're going to get one of Stenberger, McKenna, and we just have to make one other move, and we don't have to get as creative. Now I think it forces Kyle Davidson and company to get creative in how they improve this team this offseason. Now, granted, with having the 4th overall pick, they're still going to improve this team somehow, some way, right? Whether
find the silver linings better than anybody can.
I'm doing my best, man. I get it. I get a lot of people are down bad, and I'll tell you what, I'm in the mud with you, but it's so early to tell.
But you're not wrong, Ron. And this is why I want to say, like, hey, what's my biggest criticism of Kyle Davidson been thus far? He relies so much on the draft.
Sure.
You have to find a way to improve the team. You've gone on record. You've said you're going to improve the team.
Now do it.
You don't get Gavin McKenna. You don't get Stenberg. Your roster was not able to overcome injuries. You've got a lot of young guys. Figure out a way to make it happen next year. I don't think you're wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe that forces him into being a little more aggressive.
100%.
And we talked about it on the last show. It's not going to be pretty either.
No, it's probably not.
People are not going to like the way that he has to be aggressive if it's 100%. Done right.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what, too, and just kind of throwing this in there because it's been floating around, especially in the last, when we recorded, it was Friday. So 4 days? Now that Roman Kancerov's season is over, there was he's not fully sure if he's coming over or not. There's no guaranteed answer. I think KD's working that angle now of like, hey, kid, come on. You're going to have a hell of an opportunity. Like, you're probably going to play in the top 6. You might be on the second line, but you're going to get every opportunity to be a legit everyday NHL player. Come be a part of that, right? And I think they sat back and they said, depending where we get our draft lottery spot, here are the 3 or 4 different directions from each of those spots we can go with it. And now I think it's going to be fascinating to see. The GM side of me here says, man, this is going to be hilariously just kind of wild to watch now because we really don't know what's going to happen. And yeah, this is a great point, right? But it's like, okay, what happens next? Tone, a quick question here from Field of Vision. He says, you see Toronto taking McKenna, no question, or they trade the pick for players or a lesser pick?
They're taking McKenna.
They're taking McKenna. And here's the reason behind it. So this is a perfect segue back into our Toronto stuff here before we get to our final question and then our segments to close this thing out, Tony, because I got to fill you in for those that didn't see it. I think Pistol Petey saw it because there was a mention in the comments here to I don't know who he said it to, but there was a mention to Keith Pelly in here and it made me laugh. So the CEO of Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment, MLSE, which owns the Toronto Maple Leafs and a number of other sports franchises in the city of Toronto. He sat up there with John Chaika and Matt Sundin. Matt Sundin represented the Maple Leafs tonight on the Draft Lottery broadcast. They are kind of the new head of the front office. So for those that don't remember who John Chaika is, Chaika was the GM for the Arizona Coyotes for a hot minute. He was 25 years old when he got the job, or well, at least when he was hired as assistant GM. I believe he was 26 when he got the GM job. The first draft he was there, they got Clayton Keller and Jacob Chychrun. Everybody's like, wow, maybe this guy knows what he's doing. And then every draft since then, they've kind of pissed it away. He gets fired. He had some scandals attached to him as well. Arizona lost draft capital because they were illegally working out players at the combine. He got personally suspended because he was trying to get a job with the Devils, even though he was still employed with the Coyotes. And he's always been kind of like an analysis, AI numbers nerd kind of guy, even though he has a hockey background. Like he played like major junior hockey. So he's not like totally clueless about the sport, but he very much has like a business pedigree and a business background. So he sat up there with Keith Pelly and with Matt Sundin and the Toronto media, which Tony, I thought Chicago had rough media. I think
Toronto is far worse.
And I got some good insight into this too, because one of my favorite non-Chicago sports podcasts to tune into every once in a blue moon, especially when big topics happen, is the Steve Dangle podcast with himself, Adam Wilde, and Jesse Blake up in Toronto. They heavily cover the Leafs. Obviously, Steve Dangle does the Leafs fan reaction videos. If you haven't seen those, they're wildly entertaining. Highly recommended, especially when they lose. They're extra funny. Sometimes if you need a good laugh, they're a good place to find them. But they were talking about this and how ruthless some of the media is. And some people in the media have like reputations for certain. Tony, I will send you this for your own personal enjoyment after the show. But for those that need to see this, let me put it this way. Toronto, they wouldn't give a straight answer on anything. I think Chaika and Sundin did fine on their answers, but I think Keith Pelly was in over his head and just kept getting more and more pissed off throughout the course of the thing. But it got to a point where I believe his name's Scott Simmons, who's like super well known in Toronto, hard ass, like really kind of hit with a question I've never heard in a press conference. He said, not full quote, but this is the rough estimate of what he said. He said, Keith, what due diligence did you do that brought you to the John Chaika hiring? Because I did my own due diligence and I talked to about 20 different people in the NHL that if I named them, we would all know majority of those names if I were to name drop. And obviously he didn't, but he's like, these are prominent people in the NHL and employment. He goes, there was one person that vouched positively for the John Chaika hiring. He said everybody else frankly called it a sham. They called him a snake oil salesman, a fraud, a scam art or a con artist. Like, and these are actual verbs that he used in this question, Tony. And he said, how did you come to this as a good decision based on your intel when my intel said this was fucking stupid? So Toronto's kind of had it a little bit rough. They're 100% staying put and taking the Canadian kid McKenna. And that's how I was trying to get back to this.
Yeah, but here. Like, don't also make me feel sorry for them in the process.
No. See, Tony, I'll tell you what. I listened to this because it felt good hearing another franchise that's arguably in a far worse position than the Blackhawks are. Because Danny Wirtz isn't up there sounding like
if there's one thing that's worse than Chicago sports, it's probably Toronto sports in terms of heartbreak.
Yeah, I
We
would say
kind of need
so.
that to keep happening, though.
Yeah, there's always got to be one, right? Like there's always got to be one that keeps it like kind of in football. Like for me as a Chicago Bears fan, when things were really bad, it
I'm
was
sorry
always
for you, by the way.
stop it. Don't even. We're not getting into that tonight. It was always, hey, at least the New York Jets exist because like that was always a franchise you could point to and say they have it worse, right? As long as there's one, it makes you feel a little better. So I was kind of listening. Just it's fun to just absorb the information when you have no horse in the race and just kind of listening to the shit show that
For
is.
sure. Yeah, that's the best part about sports.
But to answer Field Division's comment there, they're 100% taking McKenna. I would be shocked if they went any other direction.
I think they're 100% taking McKenna too. It's going to be heartbreaking for me.
I think it's going to be heartbreaking for a lot of people. I don't think you're alone on that.
That was the storyline entering this entire draft lottery was, and I don't even think they're first cousins.
No,
but
they're like
even on
they're
the
like fourth cousins.
Yeah, they're like fourth cousins. But like even on the ESPN broadcast today, like one of the first things they said was like interviewing McKenna, like, how has Connor Bedard helped you? And you're sitting there as the Hawks fan. This is gonna be so good. And I think I sent it out to you earlier when you asked me, like, how do you feel today? Hawks are going to be picking first overall. We're going to get Gavin McKenna. Tony, it didn't happen. I'm pissed.
I do have to ask, though, and I might open a small can of worms here for a second, but I do have another question to get to you.
Yeah.
How much more disappointed would you have been if the Hawks got number 1 and didn't take Gavin McKenna? Would that be worse than this situation of knowing you're not getting Gavin McKenna?
That's a tough question. I like the question. Because
like, what if KD walks?
What if they went number one and took Caleb Malhotra?
Okay, they do that. You and I are both flipping shit. But at least if they take Stenberg, it's okay. That makes sense.
But I saw our guy Prospect Don pose that question last weekend. Like, you got to come to reality with. There's people who are watching all of these guys play all the time. And they're paid to do that. If they make the wrong decision, that's on them. It's our job to comment on it. I'd be pissed.
Yeah.
I'd be fucking pissed.
No, that's fair. That's why I wanted to beg the question and ask. Tony, the last question I want to ask you here before we get into ruffling feathers and any stick taps, if you have any to hand out on either forum,
I've got a stick tap to give out.
Are you team trade or team stay with the 4th overall pick right now?
Well, I think Kyle Davidson's already laid the groundwork on team stay here. And you have kind of talked me off the ledge on why trading this pick and making it valuable to the Blackhawks is going to be, I don't know, somewhat damn near impossible. I don't know. You really tempered my expectations, and I'm sure you're going to give. I'm going to save some of it for the listeners to let you hear what you have to say on it. But I would try and trade this pick for the most impactful forwards you can to this group, if you can. But my full expectations at this point are that the Hawks are going to take either Malhotra if he falls, or a right-handed defenseman. So yeah, I'm a little, I guess you could say, whelmed by picking 4th. I'm a little whelmed by picking 4th. And I think if I feel whelmed, I'm pretty sure a lot of NHL GMs may feel whelmed by that 4th pick overall. It could be a great draft class, but none of these kids in any draft class are proven assets. It's a lottery ticket.
It's true.
Even at number 1, right? Like, Ron, how many times do we sit here and find accounts that'll sit there and say, Bedard's a bust.
All the time.
All the time. So who defines this shit?
It's true. It's fair.
Who defines it? Nobody does. The 4th overall pick will be fine. Is it gonna make the rebuild go faster? No. That's Kyle Davidson's job to figure it out right now.
100%.
Because he's the one who said, we're going to take the next step.
Yeah. And 2 words for you says here, trade a 4th overall pick on a rebuilding team. Yeesh. It would depend on what you're trading it for, right? Like this isn't just, go ahead and just trade it for anything. You need to get a borderline franchise altering player. Now, this is where it becomes a fascinating discussion, especially when Toronto's sitting there at number 1, taking Gavin McKenna. Is Toronto now all of a sudden maybe a little bit more willing to part with a Matthew Nyes, especially if it's the 4th overall
pick? Are they willing to part with Matthew Nyes, or are they willing to double down on everything they have because you're going to inject
Gavin McKenna? Right. So, but I think it creates, again, the kind of the interest here. So, Tony, I will take everybody down a little bit of a rabbit hole that I went down earlier, and just why I think, barring something borderline unforeseen, the Hawks are going to stand pat and take a player at this number 4 overall pick. And here's why. You have to go all the way back to 2013 to see when a player or when a pick was dealt on draft day in the top 10. That pick once belonged to the New Jersey Devils. It was traded to the Vancouver Canucks. The New Jersey Devils sat back and love that comparison of Chase Reed. And again, this is a deep draft. If Chase Reed becomes a Seabrook-esque player for the Blackhawks, that's awesome. You love that. They could potentially need a right-handed defenseman, right? There's a lot of what ifs that go into that. But back to the rabbit hole. The New Jersey Devils traded the 9th overall pick to the Vancouver Canucks for then Corey Schneider to become their starting goaltender. We're going way back in the way back machine here. That pick for the Vancouver Canucks became Bo Horvat in that 2013 draft. Then you have to go pretty far through. The Ducks made a trade. Ottawa traded their pick to the Ducks that ended up being the 10th pick, which became Nick Ritchie in 2014. But that happened before the draft and happened in a subsequent deal. 2015, none of the top 10 picks were dealt. 2016, the same exact thing. 2017, the 7th overall pick was dealt to the New York Rangers from Arizona. That was a terrible John Chaika trade, speaking of a guy that we already talked about on this show. 2018, same thing. Nobody
guy that is self-aware.
Super self-aware. The 4th overall pick in 2019 was dealt from Ottawa to Colorado. If I remember correctly, that was dealt for Matthew Duchene. But that happened well before it became that pick. So that was just luck for Colorado that pick became a top 4 pick. It became Bowen Byram. Same thing goes for Ottawa's pick at number 3 in 2020, which became Tim Stützle. That was a part of the Erik Karlsson trade that San Jose originally made at that time when it was all, or maybe not.
That was a wild trade when it went down too.
That was a long time ago trade for sure. Vancouver traded their pick to
Does
Arizona.
Blackhawks Cowboy remember it?
Probably not. We're dating ourselves here on the way back machine. Dylan Gunther went 9th overall. That was a trade from Vancouver to Arizona. If I remember correctly, that could have been the Oliver Ekman-Larsson deal that made that pick happen. The 6th overall pick in 2022 went from Chicago to Columbus, but that was part of the Seth Jones trade a year before. So that was kind of one of those weird ones. As I mentioned a bit earlier in the show, Ottawa moved their pick to the Hawks at number 7, which became Kevin Korchinski. But that was also done in the summer of leading up to the draft in the Alex DeBrincat trade. No movement in the top 10 in 2023, no movement in the top 10 in 2024, and then no movement again in the top 25. So again, the top 10, you don't see a lot of movement. Outside the top 10, totally different animal. There's a lot of fucking movement that happens in that like 11 to 20 range. We see it every single year. But very rarely do top 10 picks get moved. And if they do get moved, they're moved far enough in advance where the pick becoming a top 10 pick is fortunate for the team that acquired the pick. Very rarely do we see those picks move just
So
before.
you don't think the Hawks are going to be able to pull one off this season?
I'm not saying they wouldn't be able to pull one off. I just think it's unlikely. And here's the reason for that. I think a lot of teams truly do fall in love with players in the draft. I think that's just a general rule of thumb. Now,
who do you think the Hawks have fallen in love with at number 4?
I don't know. I genuinely don't. I think it's too early to tell. But what I do think is there's also
gut feeling, Ron. Who are we getting?
I don't know. I really don't know. But here's the thing we have to remember, Tony, and this is also another reason why I don't think we see top 10 draft capital moved around a whole lot. In the NHL, unless you're a top 1, maybe 2 pick, very rarely do you step in immediately as an 18-year-old and make a difference. So teams that have the capital to potentially move up or move on from a player to try and move up, very rarely does that happen unless they're entering a rebuild and they're willing to be able to be patient with that player. You're not seeing a team like, let's say Toronto, right? Hey, we lucked out. We got the draft lottery. We're going to inject McKenna into this team that we think can still make the playoffs, and we're going to go get it. If you're them, why are you trading Matthew Nyes for the 4th overall pick for a defenseman that's probably not going to see the NHL for 3 years? At best case scenario, maybe 2, right?
Ron, I just have to say, the later this night gets, the more I'm okay with taking a right-handed defenseman in this draft.
Okay. That's quite the development.
It is a development. But 2 words for you right here. Reeder Verhoff. You gave me 3 words. But
it's possible.
It just, if you're not going to be able to select a forward that's going to help this group, Artem Levshunov insurance kind of feels
possible.
And I didn't want to be here. I did not want to fucking be here right now.
Tony, I don't know if you remember. I believe
but
that was
Artem,
a conversation.
you were talking about.
We had this conversation middle of the season of hey,
but Artem Levshunov insurance and maybe some trades. I don't know. I hate that I'm getting comfortable with that idea, though. Like from a fan standpoint, I don't want to think about this. Here's happening real time.
Here's the thing that we haven't seen in a few years. There hasn't been a draft that has yielded immediate impact defensemen in a fair amount of time other than Matthew Schaefer. The only other draft that I can really think of off the top of my head where we've seen that happen almost borderline immediately was, ironically, the last time the draft was at the United Center in Chicago in 2017 when Miro Heiskanen and Cale Makar both went in the top 5 of that draft and ultimately became franchise defensemen. Now,
here's my thought process, though, behind this.
Sure.
You're going to need to sign defensemen in order to have a sustainable run. We saw that with the 2010 100%. Cup teams. So if your opportunity right now is to find someone who isn't going to be impactful and be able to step in as a 1, 2, if not 3 defenseman in 3 to 4 years, you're going to have to Kyle's going to have to navigate the Sam Rinzel, the Artem Levshunov, a lot of these guys. Even Wyatt Kaiser isn't locked up long-term. Louis Crevier isn't locked up long-term. The only defenseman that you really have locked up long-term is Alex Vlasic.
100%.
So, I don't know. I know Hawks fans don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it myself.
Are you ruffling your own feathers?
I'm ruffling my own feathers, Fred.
It's time to ruffle some feathers.
That's disgusting. Why am I talking myself into this right now? Why am I talking myself into this right now, Ron?
You know what? You know what's funny though is you ultimately ruffled your own feathers. And where I was going to go with ruffling feathers tonight was going to ruffle my own feathers, Tony. This is an ironic switcheroo here tonight because here's the thing. I have already convinced myself that Caleb Malhotra is a Chicago Blackhawk, and I don't love that. Admittedly, I don't love that. I would almost, Tony, rather
That's
piggyback
gross.
on
That's
your
gross. Let's get a
your
right-handed
thought
defenseman.
and get a right-handed defenseman. And yes, do they take a little bit more time to come around? Sure, of course they do. But if you have a guy that you really value, that you think maybe could truly become one of those top dogs, then all of a sudden you look at that blue line and go, well, we have assets to deal now. Now one of these guys could be moved. Maybe it is Artem Levshunov. Maybe it is Sam Rinzel. Maybe it is Kevin Korchinski, whomever. But I really have sat here and just convinced myself that Caleb Malhotra is a Blackhawk, and it bothers me because truly I don't see him as anything more than a middle six forward in the NHL long term, and that would bother me if that's all they get out of the 4th overall pick. So that's me ruffling my own feathers, Tony.
Why are we on opposite ends of the spectrum here, Rob?
I don't know. I really don't know. Couple of comments here, really quick though. Oh boy, I'm in a Fubor Totali. I might have absolutely destroyed that name. I apologize in advance. He says, package it and see if you can get some immediate help. He says, with Toronto getting number 1, they aren't dealing. Dallas will find a way to sign Robertson, but that's why GMs get paid the big bucks. 100% correct. I agree with that sentiment. And our good friend Josh, back in the comments here, Joshua Bauman says, already showed some serious flashes last season. I understand he had some lows, but I trust that the little consistency in team and coaching from year to year will do wonders. He continues saying he's been on a different team every year for like the last 4 or 5 years. And then he says he is a physical specimen, which is true. I mean, these are not incorrect statements by any stretch of imagination. So, again, it's going to continue to be very fascinating to see where this thing goes. Tony, let's get to the next step here.
Time to give out some stick taps.
Tony, the floor is yours. Stick taps.
Totally forgot who I was going to stick tap earlier. Being honest.
That's okay. That's okay. Hey, I'll tell you what.
Things happen.
It has been a long day for Four Feathers podcast. That's why we are recording at 20 minutes to midnight Central Time. Some of you might be in the Eastern Time Zone listening to us on Wednesday because it's that late.
No, I remembered mine. It's our guy, the Prospect Don, at the Prospect Don, Anthony Donati. Man, he showed up to his stream today in like a suit coat. Yeah, he was showing off his new draft lottery prospect whole thing that he built over there at draftprospectshockey.com. Big friend of the show. He's been doing some really good stuff. I know everybody goes to tankathon.com. You run your draft lottery simulators. Go check out Draft Prospect Hockey. Donati's been building some good stuff. Can't wait to get him back on the show. Ron, I don't know if you've checked it out, but his website's pretty legit.
I will certainly be.
I know you're a big cap friendly guy. Go check out what our guy Donati's been building. It's been really cool.
I miss cap friendly, but I will be in the weeds of our good friend Prospect Don's website in the not so distant future for sure. Tony, I will give out a random stick tap here. It's actually a name we've already mentioned. It's not Blackhawks affiliated directly. I've already mentioned my enjoyment and appreciation for Steve Dangle. Steve Dangle also has a special needs sister, so there's a very identifiable part of me that can relate to Steve Dangle, and watching him be a content creator long term for covering the Toronto Maple Leafs has been cool. They did a live stream for the draft lottery tonight, and the reaction of watching them get the number 1 pick was quite hilarious to enjoy. So a quick little stick taps out to them. A friend of the program, yet to be a guest, but friend of the program, Mr. Mario Tirabassi, responded to to their tweet and with the Jordan, I love you but fuck you to Larry Bird meme. I think that's a very fair way to feel toward Toronto fans, especially toward Steve Dangle, because again, love the guy, but damn it, son of a bitch, they got what we wanted, and it's a bummer ultimately to see that be the case. So that's where my steps go.
Another
for
stick
the
tap
season.
to the comment section tonight on
100%.
YouTube. You guys have been fucking awesome. Thank you for hanging with us.
Absolutely.
This Blackhawks almost therapy session. We like to talk Blackhawks. That's why we do Four Feathers podcast. So thank you to Lebowski, 2 words for you, Josh, Foo Bar, Totale, everybody else who's been in the comments tonight on YouTube. Thank you for hanging out with us and talking Blackhawks hockey.
100%. The comment section has been electric, especially for this late on a Tuesday night. It is definitely appreciated that everybody has tuned in with us.
Cinco
Tony,
de Drinko, baby.
Cinco de Drinko, at least for 20 more minutes before it is officially May 6th, and then there's nothing to celebrate anymore. Tony, what's on tap next besides maybe a few more Cinco de Drinko drinks for a few individuals out here on a Tuesday night? Upcoming items for us, it's going to be some fun content, getting prepared for the draft, all the good stuff like that. Otherwise, it's the NHL Draft in Buffalo, New York on June 26th and 27th. As we know, the Hawks will now pick 4th overall in that draft, at least as it stands. Things can change certainly between now and then. We'll have to see what happens. And then, Tony, following that, my Christmas morning, July 1st, NHL free agency opens. And then we're really in the heart of the offseason and getting a feel for hopefully what this Blackhawks team is going to look like come October when puck drops on a brand new season and all is said and done. Kyle Davidson and company will be plenty busy over the next 2+ months here with all the off-season items that are on the horizon. It's not so lucky lottery, Tony, in this season 7, episode 23 of the Four Feathers podcast. I want to turn it quickly back over to you. Any final thoughts before we sign off?
Final thoughts. Hey, this was the worst possible case scenario that we could have been experiencing tonight. I sent a message to Ron this morning, and I'll send the same message to my listeners. It was going to be so nice to fall asleep with the number 1 overall draft pick in the 2026 NHL draft. And that's what I was expecting. Hey, you got to speak it into existence, right, Ron?
Amen to that.
You have to. I'm upset. I know you're upset. Ron will talk you out of it. I want to talk about all the bad things that can happen. That's why you tune into this show. Again, thank you to everybody who listened. Ron's here to tell you why it's all going to be okay. I'll tell you why it won't be.
It's a little good cop, bad cop here at Four Feathers, and that it makes it fun. It makes it fun. It keeps it entertaining. It keeps it light, and it keeps it engaging for everybody at home. If we just agreed with each other, it wouldn't be fun. And that's why we do it here at Four Feathers Podcast. A quick shout out to Josh. He says he's in California, and it's only 9:41 over there. Quite jealous. You have a lot more time to your evening than the most of us. But here in the Midwest, it's almost midnight as we wrap up this Four Feathers Podcast. The not-so-lucky lottery Blackhawks get the 4th overall pick.
Don't kid yourself. It's still early.
It's still early. For you, yes, it is. It is still early for the Night Owl, Tony Marchese. From the aforementioned Tony Marchese, I am GM Ron Luce. We appreciate every single one of you tuning in with us for this episode. Going forward, we can't wait. We're going to have plenty of guests coming on. We're going to talk plenty about the NHL draft as that approaches here toward the end of June. I am looking forward to starting my own research as all gets going here in the coming days and weeks. It's going to be a lot of fun. We got a lot going on. And yes, good night, sweetheart, as we signed off here from the Four Feathers podcast. Tony, as always, at Four Feathers Pod on the socials. Head over to YouTube at OnTap Sportsnet. Like, subscribe, hit that bell button. You know when we go live, and all of our other great shows go live as well. Be sure to head over to OnTapSportsnet.com as well to find out what's on tap in Chicago sports. We appreciate you. Give us a 5-star rating if you love us. If you listen to us on podcast, we appreciate that as well. And Tony, it's almost midnight, but let's go Hawks.
Fuck the ping pong balls and let's go Hawks.